Today we're going to be talking about this beauty, the daiquiri. Not only am I going to show you the best method for getting an icy cold and refreshing daiquiri, but I'm also going to take a closer look at the ingredients and the history, as well as having a little look at some variations that you can play around with. The daiquiri is one of those drinks which has been frozen and fruitified, ending up a million miles away from its original form. Although, of course, every holiday is massively improved with the consumption of a frozen mango daiquiri while lounging in a cabana. The simple combination of lime, sugar and white rum has stood the test of time, and a good daiquiri is seen as a badge of honour amongst bartenders, as it's so simple but so easy to screw up. In fact, a snackery, i.e. a small shot of daiquiri, is often a bartender's handshake when visiting a friend in another bar. So, after I show you how to master the balance of these three ingredients, you'll be transporting you and your pals to sunny Cuba in no time. Before we get stuck into talking about products and how to make the perfect daiquiri, let's have a little look back at its history. The daiquiri story is actually a pretty straightforward and well substantiated one, so there is an exception to every rule. In the late 1800s, the USA started mining in Cuba, and one such venture was headed by a gentleman named Jennings Cox. Amongst other employment enticements was a monthly ration of the local rum, which was Bacardi. The story goes that Cox ran out of gin when entertaining guests, so he mixed his rum with some lime and sugar, and voila, the daiquiri was born. Jennings' original recipe called for the juice of 6 lemons, which would have actually been limon, a local citrus more similar to lime, 6 teaspoons full of sugar, 6 Bacardi cups (Carta Blanca), 2 small cups of mineral water, and plenty of crushed ice. It became popular with all of the other miners, and since they all worked together in the mines in Daiquiri, Cox decided to name it after that village. In turn, it was picked up by popular Cuban drinking establishments such as La Floridita. It became synonymous with Cuban drinking culture, which was massively romanticized in the States at the beginning of the 19th century, notably by Ernest Hemingway, and so the daiquiri made its way stateside and into the Classic Cocktail Hall of Fame, where it remains to this day. So the rum we're using is Bacardi Superior Carta Blanca. As we just heard, this is one of only a few classic cocktail recipes where we actually know the exact spirit used in the original. Rum is actually a really interesting way of tracing the history of colonialism in the Caribbean. So each of the 4 main colonial powers, England, France, Spain and Portugal, brought their own distilling traditions and national palates to bear on rum, which is a byproduct of the sugar industry in those countries. So, for instance, rum produced in British colonies is often pot distilled, the same as Scotch, giving it a much heavier flavour profile, so think like Pussers or English Harbour, whereas Spanish colonies went for a more brandy-esque flavour profile, refined with a lot of fruit and herbal notes. So Bacardi is by far the most famous of this lighter Spanish style, and its marketing efforts have definitely had a massive impact on the popularity of rum in general. Bacardi Carta Blanca is the original white rum and is a blend of heavier and lighter bodied rums, which is then charcoal filtered, so you don't let the clear liquid fool you. It's absolutely packed full of flavour. You've got lots of citrus and green fruit, stone fruits. It's quite herbal and spicy and also has a slight funk. So it brings plenty to the table in this simple cocktail. When it comes to the lime juice, fresh is definitely best. One of the trickiest things in balancing this cocktail is reacting to the fact that every lime you use is going to taste a little bit different, and lime juice also oxidizes very quickly, so even if you squeeze the juice on the same day, it will vary in flavour from hour to hour. There's actually been some research and blind tastings which have found that lime juice around 4 to 10 hours old is actually more mellow and balanced than just squeezed juice. So while this attention to detail is what elevates cocktails in the very best bars, at home I would just make sure you don't use old lime juice, i.e. anything over 10 hours old, as it becomes quite bitter and astringent. I also use a little strip of lime zest in my daiquiri, as I find the oils and the fragrance just bring a complexity and structure which really brings a drink together. As for sugar, the original daiquiri was made with powdered cane sugar. Personally, I find that the consistency and speed and cleanliness that you get using a sugar syrup in the bar outweighs the fun sherbet flavour that powdered sugar can give. However, do feel free to experiment, as it does make a small difference. Just make sure that you dissolve the sugar in the lime juice first, as it won't incorporate just by shaking. Do try and use cane sugar if you can though, as it naturally works really well with the rum. And I tend to use a 2-to-1 sugar to water ratio, as that kind of thicker syrup really helps with the mouthfeel. So with the daiquiri, cold is key. My friend and bartender extraordinaire, Nathan Beasley, has been known to say that the daiquiri is the bartender's answer to air conditioning, so it has to be bracingly cold, and I couldn't agree more. If you can, keep your glass in the freezer, and I know I always tell you to shake hard, but this time I mean really, really hard. So the original recipe actually called for both water and ice, so dilution is really important here. Some bartenders will shake on a mixture of crushed and cubed ice. I tend to just use cubed ice, but shake for a little bit longer than usual. Just make sure your tin is really good and frosty. You might also notice that the proportions are slightly different than my usual 2-1.5. You really want the rum to shine through on this one, and this 3-1.5 formula makes a daiquiri that Hemingway would be proud of. Usual sour proportions will work as well, it'll just be a much more citrus forward drink. Cut a small strip of lime zest off your lime with as little pith as possible, so you want the aromatic oils but not too much bitterness. Then cut and squeeze your lime. Now you're going to add all of your ingredients to your shaker tin, including your lime zest. So 60 ml of your white rum, 20 ml of freshly squeezed lime juice, 10 ml of your 2-to-1 cane sugar syrup. Gonna fill your shaker tin full with as much ice as you can fit in there. Pop your tins together and shake as hard as you can. Grab your coupe out of the freezer. Gonna use your hawthorn strainer to hold the big ice back. So you can definitely just leave the little ice shards in and not fine strain this at all. Or you can do what I'm gonna do, which is use a julep strainer, which will hold back most but not all of the little ice chips. An ice cold daiquiri. So now you know how to make a fabulous daiquiri, what about exploring some variations? The Hemingway daiquiri, or Papa Doble, is probably the most famous of the daiquiri variations, named for the great man himself. It is also my mum's favourite cocktail, which may not be quite as notable to the rest of you. Hemingway had a hereditary condition, which was a precursor to diabetes, so he shied away from sugar. And he was also a notorious alcoholic, so he asked for La Floridita's famous frozen daiquiri with no sugar and double the rum. The bartender added grapefruit juice and a little maraschino, and nowadays a drop of sugar is usually added to make it more palatable to those of us with less extreme tastes than Hemingway himself. One of my personal favourites is the Royal Bermuda Yacht Club, which uses curacao and falernum, which is a ginger, lime and almond syrup, as the sweeteners. Or, if you really want to kickstart your night, a nuclear daiquiri uses overproof rum, green chartreuse, falernum and lime juice for a herbal and zesty explosion. So now you know all about the classic daiquiri and some of its most famous variations. Maybe I should show you some or make you a fun frozen daiquiri. Make sure you subscribe and hit the notifications button to see if I do.